Welcome back to Ty and That Guy. I am Wes Chatham, and this is my good pal, the lovely, extremely handsome, nice long wavy hair, Ty Franck.
Thank you, man. That means a lot coming from you. You know it.
Yeah. We're excited. This is our first part 2 of Ty and That Guy. We are talking about episode 1 from season 1, and we're also talking about the movie Alien and how important Alien is to us and how it influenced us to be storytellers, but also how much it influenced Ty and Daniel in the creation of The Expanse. But we're really excited because we have a special guest today. Who's our special guest, Ty Franck?
Thomas Jane, who, he's a man of many talents, many interests. Mostly we know him as Detective Miller from the first couple of seasons of this show. And lately, most recently, as the director of episode 3 of season 5 of the show. So he's been all over on our show. He's got his fingers in everything.
And also happens to be a massive Alien fan. He was supposed to be with us on part 1, but we're just excited that we got him here on part 2. So we're going to, when we bring him in and we start talking, we're going to jump in a little Thomas Jane, learn a little bit about him and how he got involved and coming up in LA. And also, I'm really excited as production company because I feel like he's a phenomenal storyteller. He's a natural born storyteller. And him and I have a lot of similar taste. And so I'm just so excited with the stuff that he's creating and coming up with. And so we're really looking forward to that.
Yeah, the conversation about the stuff he has coming is very exciting because, as you know, the three of us have like the same favorite author.
Yeah.
And so I know he's excited to do some adaptations of that author's work. And already I'm excited.
Yeah. So should we bring him in?
We should.
All right. There he is. How you doing, brother?
It's kind of like you're talking about me behind my back, but I'm actually here, and you know that I'm actually here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. You grew up where did you grow up?
I grew up in Maryland, about an hour outside of Washington, D.C., in the suburbs. I was a suburban kid who grew up in the 70s and 80s in, what was sort of this new phenomenon, which had been going on for, 20 years, but it was suburbs, right?
We did we had you on for the season 5 after show, and you told this phenomenal story, which we want you to get into it again, about the first time you saw Alien and what that experience was like for you. Is that the first time you remember wanting to be a part of this, of storytelling as a career?
So our show's about Alien, but where we connected, the three of us, was we both had we're extremely impacted by the film Alien. And how it happened for me was I was 8 years old. And of course, my dad never really told us what we were doing. We were all piled in the car and we drove an hour into Washington, D.C., where they still had those fantastic double-decker movie theaters.
Wow.
And right? They and people were still going to them. And I remember standing in line. We're standing in line. It's like 1:00 in the afternoon. It turned out to be the second showing of Alien. But I had no clue what I was getting into. I just remember the green egg. and I'm thinking, this could be a comedy. In space, no one can hear you scream. And a green egg. I'm 8, by the way, and this is what I remember. And if you ask me what else I remember from my life, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you. But this is burned into my memory for some reason.
Yep.
And I remember the first showing, the audience members leaving the theater. And they had this look on, they were kind of pale and they looked stunned.
Shell-shocked.
Shell-shocked.
Yeah.
And I'm watching them. I'm like, you know what? It's probably not a comedy. They are shell-shocked walking out of the theater. And then we get let in. and we sit down and the lights go down, and then those lines come up on the screen. You don't even, it's Alien, right? You don't even know what the fuck it is, like a slash, a dash, right? And it forms the word Alien. I literally, from that moment on, my life was different. Okay. The only other thing I'll say is when the chest burster scene happened, my mother had a Coca-Cola in her, and she threw it in the air and landed on the woman behind her, soaked her, right? And she didn't get up to leave to go, clean up. Yeah. It stayed.
Yeah.
And that is the impact, that had on everyone, but especially people like us. I made my father buy the pamphlet. They used to be in those big movie theaters. They actually put out these little mini books about the movie, and they would sell them in the lobby. Mm-hmm. You guys are familiar with this, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
And I made my dad buy one, and I wore that thing out taking it to school because I guarantee you I was the only 8-year-old in my elementary school who had seen Alien. Okay.
He sounds like my kind of dad,
And I would tell my friends the entire story. And again, like that's, I guess, the birth of a storyteller, right? Because,
right.
And by the way, ad nauseum, until they asked me to shut up.
And then going through there, were you just in love with the cinema ever since then? I mean, a Blade Runner.
That became a huge flaming light but at 8 years old, I didn't know that human beings created that kind of thing. You know what I mean? I wasn't savvy to the fact that could be a profession. But it was never going away. And as I grew older, I've discovered that it actually was that people created this kind of thing. I mean, it still kind of blows my mind. Mind. It's Irish. It still kind of knocks me out that people create this experience. And that was it. I mean, I dropped out of high school at the age of 15 because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be in that world.
Wait, you dropped out at 15?
I did. Yeah.
And what did your dad have to say about that?
Oh, they were not on board. So 15, I want to go, Hollywood, and I want to become a part of the process of creating these fantasies for human beings. And she's like, "Are you out of your fucking mind? Obviously you are." And then he said, "Are you gay?"
Right. like how does that connect? Because you want to go to Hollywood, you must be gay.
You must be gay, because my dad. I love my dad. He's a hunter. Right. I just went duck hunting with the old man. You know what I mean? He goes out and kills pheasant and quail and brings them back home and cook, and he's like, "You want to do what?" It was disappointing.
Well, and the story you told is you didn't go to, you did go to Hollywood briefly, but didn't you go to like India and get your break in India?
I dropped out of school at the age of 15.
So 15, what is sophomore?
Yes, sophomore. Yeah. Okay. I never made it past the 10th grade.
Okay. So you made it. Okay.
So my mother talks to my neighbor over the fence, right? In suburbia.
Yeah.
And she's like, "You know what?" And she's like, "This kid, he wants to be an actor. He won't fucking go to high school." And the neighbor says, "You know what? I work right next to an acting school in Bethesda, Maryland." And, so that's how I ended up in this acting school in Bethesda, working with this old time, literally did silent movies and radio dramas, right? Old time actor named Ralph Tavican. And Ralph, I started studying with Ralph. So Ralph calls me up because I'm working, of course, at the hardware store. He calls me at the hardware store. He goes, "Listen, there's some Indians in town and they're making a movie." And he hooked me up with that audition, and I got the part, and that was my movie. I was 16.
Get the fuck. So it sounds like an
16 years old, making a Bollywood film with these crew of Indian. It was so bizarre. I would talk about alien. It was bizarre.
It's interesting. It sounds like an our town type of existence. Like you're living in these suburbs with farmhouses. You're working at the local hardware store, and studying acting. And then they come, and you're involved with a Bollywood movie. That must have been so exotic. From that, what year was that?
It was like, I think it was about 87, maybe 86.
And then what was
like, but we made the movie, and then we all flew to India, dude. And I lived there for 5 months finishing that film, and I did another film there. But you're absolutely right. It was like landing on Mars for me, from a suburban kid who's, never been outside of Maryland, to go to India. The smells, the dirt, the people, the lifestyle. It was shocking, where I was, and that also was very influential, for a person.
Did you learn a lot from the filmmaking process with them?
I mean, absolutely, dude. They are. What was fun about Bollywood was they were essentially in the 80s. Essentially Hollywood in the 1940s. That was the feeling. They even had the old looking cars, and the way that when the movie stars would show up to the studio to go to work, there'd be a crowd of people, and they're all taking their picture. They're just going to work at 8:00 in the morning.
Right.
But everybody's there. They're taking in the beauty, and of course they're dressed. They've already got their makeup on, and they're dressed to the nines, and they're getting out of these gorgeous sort of pseudo Rolls Royces.
I have an interesting insert right now, and it just popped in my head. The first time you and I ever worked together, you don't even know this. You and I did a movie together with a Bollywood director called Broken Horses.
Oh shit!
Did you know that I was yeah. And because I remember showing up the first day of work, and there was pictures of you because you shot first, and there was pictures of you, and they were like, oh, Thomas is you were like the older the I don't remember or something like that, and that was such a crazy experience, and it just popped in my head. I was sitting here talking about it, and I was like, wait a minute.
You never told me that.
I didn't connect those dots, and I was like, wait a minute.
For like 6 years, dude.
I know, and I was like, wait a minute. I worked with
rethink this relationship, bro.
I was like, I worked with a Bollywood director now, and then it just hit me. I was like, holy shit, Thomas! I never even seen the movie. Yeah, I was like, Thomas in the movie. Sorry, that was just.
He was cool, dude. I liked him.
I had a fun experience.
I thought he was a cool dude. He was a good director,
and he was a film scholar, and he loved. Right. He loved film, and I had a really great experience. It was a fun part. Really had a great time with all the other actors involved. So you did these Bollywood movies, you get to LA. I'm always curious because I know what my experience was. And what was your experience of LA compared to your expectation?
Well, first of all, this is how naive I was. I didn't go to LA. I went to San Francisco at 17.
Those are not the same place.
Yeah.
I drove across the country to be an actor in San Francisco. Now, it took me a year to figure out, like, this isn't going to happen.
Who told you to go to San Francisco? Where did that
I did. I was like,
did you want to be in that Michael Douglas show, The Streets of San Francisco, and you saw that?
It sounded like a cool city that, was California. I mean, that's how naive I was. I didn't understand the way shit works. So I spent a year in San Francisco. Then I drove down to LA.
Uh-huh.
And I turned 18 in in LA. I turned 18 in LA, but I had a different experience than most. I lived in my car, and then I sold my car to go to an acting school, right? I sold my car to give the acting school the money so that I could.
And did they let you live in the acting school?
And essentially was homeless. In fact, I was homeless.
Jesus.
But that's what I wanted to do, and that was the choice that I made. And then one of the teachers at the acting school, of course, realized that I was literally eating leftover food out of trash cans, and she says, "You know what? I've got a shed in my backyard. Why don't you stay there?"
Wow.
Next to the lawnmower. And by the way, you can mow my lawn. If you mow my lawn and sleep with the lawnmower, you'll have a plate. And believe me, it was a lifesaver, Wow.
You're like the acting version of Rudy.
Yeah. Oh, Ty, have you heard this stuff? This is amazing. Like,
I have never heard this story.
Group and everything. This is.
I don't even know why I'm telling you guys this.
No, I only heard the Bollywood part of this. I hadn't heard the LA part of this.
This is great. And then, so what year is this?
I think it would be the early 90s.
And then, where were you sleeping before the shed? Were you just on sleeping on the street, or what were you?
I was on the street. And that's a story that I don't think we're going to get into.
Okay. All right.
I was on the street.
The fortitude, that's, to push through that. I think, wow.
I'll just say one thing, and then you can, I saw people that were more talented than me in the world that I was coming up in, which was also 99 Seat Theater on Santa Monica Boulevard. Right. I saw people that were more talented than me that gave up and never became an actor and what they wanted to do.
Right.
And that does have something to do with that fortitude.
I honestly feel like, and I obviously I know a lot of writers, a lot of novelists.
Right.
And there's a lot of very talented people who do sort of give up. There's this stubbornness and arrogance.
Right.
Unearned arrogance, this stubbornness that like, I'm gonna be great. The rest of the world just hasn't caught up yet.
Interesting.
And I'm gonna keep powering on until everybody else figures out that's happening. And I feel like usually arrogance is a bad trait, but I feel like if you're breaking in some of these creative fields, you have to believe you're awesome before anybody else recognizes that you're awesome. And the people who just refuse to let go of that are the ones who are more likely to break in because they just don't give up. They're like, well, everybody else thinks I suck. They're all wrong. I'm right. And I'm going to keep going until they figure it out.
See, I had a different story. My story was, I never had that thing. I never felt like I was great or anything like that. I never had that arrogance. But my thing was, I can't do anything else. I don't want to do anything else. This is the only thing.
I'm similar. I relate to that.
Yeah. And so I was like, either I'm going to die or I get to tell stories, but I'm not going to, there's nothing else I can do that I enjoy as much and that I love as much as this.
You didn't want to spend the rest of your life putting out helicopter fires?
Hell no. Well, I mean, look, there was a period, I remember when I was getting out of the military, it was right after 9/11. And there were that was when the air marshals were ramped up and the whole branch, the air marshals were created, and they wanted military veterans. And there was a split second because I knew I was going to LA, and I knew I had a hard road ahead. But there was a split second because it was like, man, the amount of free travel and they were offering good salaries, and there was all this. And then also airports were offering me jobs to be airport firefighters. I was crash and rescue in the Navy. And so there was moments, but I was like, nah, I'm going to go sleep on couches and, do what I got to do.
It's that commitment that makes the difference. And it does require a certain amount of arrogance, but I relate to I didn't know that I was, I knew that I was good, but the commitment was like, this is what I fucking want to do. And that is what, because you have those nights when you're laying on somebody's couch and it's 3:00 in the morning and you're staring at the ceiling and you're going, what the fuck am I doing?
Oh, yeah.
We have those moments.
the world is designed to tell you you're not going to make it.
Right.
Like everyone you talk to is like, are you sure about this? Shouldn't you go get that hardware store job back? I mean, at least you would have food, and you're surrounded by other people who are trying to do the same thing as you. And there winds up being a lot of close friends that come out of that, but there also winds up being a lot of rivalry that comes out of that. Everybody's got, you get the commercial job and everybody kind of hates you for a while because you got in a commercial. I mean, I've seen that all over the creative industry and all of that stuff. If you're not just laser locked on that goal, just can knock you out of it. I don't want my friends to be mad at me when I get jobs. I don't want to be sleeping on a couch.
My God.
I want to be short on money. I don't want to work another bartending job. All of that stuff is just designed to push you away, and it's so hard to power through it.
And it pushes most people away. It works for most people.
And how long? Because that's kind of a class 1 struggle. How long did that type of struggle go on for you, Thomas? And when you were in Tennessee,
for years. I mean, of course, like most of us, I would you keep sort of part-time-ish jobs, right? And I did everything from handing out balloons on Melrose, to being a Mongolian barbecue chef, to cleaning out at 4 a.m., like cleaning out gay sex clubs where, I'm sorry, but before you could go into the club, you'd have to put plastic bags around your feet and wrap them up in order to go in and clean them out. I did all this stuff. I got a commercial for Coca-Cola.
How did you get the agent first?
Shit, man, I don't know, but I didn't even have an agent at the time. I was just hustling. You're hustling. Like, there's at 3:00 today. There's a audition. You fucking hustle, and it was different because you didn't have cell phones and everything else.
There's like 100 people in the waiting room.
So I played a chicken in a Coca-Cola commercial where I was literally in a chicken outfit.
Did you beat out other guys?
The idea was that there were like these kids and they got lost on a Halloween party and they all ended up at a little cafe drinking Coca-Cola and they were very happy, right? So, but they initially didn't want me to take off my chicken helmet, my chicken mask, but because the rules are, because they saw my face, I got into the union, and that was how that worked. And I immediately quit my job.
now,
but then I had to get another job because.
And didn't you start a theater company?
I did. It's on Heliotrope and Melrose. And we built, I think it's a 50-seat theater, and which with a bunch of like-minded friends. We built it. We built the theater and created, because it was just an empty storefront.
Right.
And created a theater, and that was cool.
Did you stay in touch with some of the people?
Oh yeah, it was called The Space at the time. We just called it The Space.
Uh-huh.
And that theater still exists, but they changed the name, and some other folks are now doing theater in that space that we built.
And the guys that you keep, some of the guys you started the theater with that you keep in touch with, are there other people that are still working in the industry?
I got to tell you that nobody that I knew has made a career out of what we do.
And what do you think it was about you that kept going, that kept pushing?
Well, you come to that crossroads. It's like I said, it's 3:00 in the morning. And by the way, it's not the first time you've had this thought, but you're staring at the ceiling and you're like, I'm a fucking kid from fucking Maryland. My dad is like, what the fuck are you doing? And I'm like, I have the same question, believe me. And there's that crossroads where what I found was that the young kids coming up, if they had another thing to do, like I remember one actor who I liked a lot, and he was very talented, and we'd go on auditions together. But he told me, we're sitting in the lobby waiting to audition for something. And he said, I just became the manager of the restaurant that I work at. And I thought in my head, it's like, well, that's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So many similar stories.
And that's exactly it. You know,
Yeah. I have a friend who's a novelist, and she supported herself for probably a decade before she started selling novels when she was still writing short stories. For a decade, she supported herself as a temp, like an accounting temp, right? So she would work in offices. And she's really smart. She's quite good. And she's very personable. So every office she worked in offered her a job. Every single one was like, hey, do you want to stop temping? You could come on here full time. And she said no for 10 years. But she knew if she said yes, she was an accountant. You knew if I say yes to one of these jobs, that's the end of my writing career.
So what was the first real shift, the first real change when where things were moving for you? And it was,
I didn't have an agent. I was a little bit of an outlier. I wasn't the typical actor, but the shift for me, I had a casting director come see me at one of my little tiny 50-seat theaters, and she was smart enough to be able. That's what she was, mining talent. She was looking for it. She was looking for talent, and oh God, I'm so sad that her name is not coming to me right now, because she saw me in one of these little theaters, and started bringing me in to audition for stuff.
Yeah. I got to say, of all the things that I've done in my now 6 years as a writer producer in television, the most depressing piece of it is casting. Let me tell you why. Because you go to a casting session, you sit with the director. If it's an episode I've written or I'm producing, like the director and I'll go to the casting session, and you got the casting director there, and you bring all these people in, and they're all these beautiful people, and they're very dressed up, and they're very excited to be there. And one by one, they come in, and they've got their little asides, and the casting director say, "Why don't you do the scene on page 4?" And they do that scene, and they look at you, and they're so hopeful. And the director goes, "Great, thanks for coming in." And then they leave. And then after they've left, we talk about them. And we might be like, "Oh my gosh, she was great. I loved her. It's too bad we're not looking for a blonde actor for this part. It would be great if she wasn't blonde," right? And that person never knows. They never know that we loved them, that we thought they were good. They never know that they just had some physical thing that didn't quite match up with what we were looking for the part. I can't help, being a writer, and
they're on their phone with their agents, be like, "I think it went good." They really responded to me.
Okay. I just Googled it because I'm that stupid. Joanna Ray. Her name is Joanna Ray.
Joanna Ray, yeah.
It's Joanna Ray. She cast for Tarantino. She cast for David Lynch. She's like a really sharp casting director. Now she's retired, but she created that. She went out and heard word of mouth or whatever, but and she went and looked at little tiny, she slogged through watching terrible productions in little 50-seat theaters to find someone that was talented. And I just like that intention is what changes people's lives.
Well, thank you, Joanna Ray, for giving Thomas his start, because we've used the shit out of him for the last couple of years.
But how did that look like? I mean, did she call you in for something and she started championing you? Like, how did that manifest?
Well, I mean, yes, she would call me personally on my phone that was plugged into the wall in my tiny apartment, and she'd say, "I want you to come in on this day of this thing," and I would have to drive and go pick up the scripts. There was nobody delivering fucking shit to me. I would go in the back alley of behind some agent's building and pick up what I was supposed to read, and she started bringing me in, and the first thing was Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, no shit.
I got one day on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I played the guy named Zeke who ran a garage, and we just had one scene. It's also where I met David Arquette. It's where I met Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman. Mm-hmm. And we still have, that friendship exists today,
Wow.
Yeah.
And and from then you just started getting the confidence, and you probably got an agent from that. And then you just started, that was like the first major shift.
That was the shift. Yeah. I mean, again, like, what Alien does is what it did for me was that it invited me into a complete world that wasn't this reality. It exposed me to the power of the imagination. It's always been a dream of mine, to be able to contribute to that landscape of the imagination. The same reason why Ty writes his novels. And again, we could talk about books, because I'm sure that all three of us have had books that have been as influential to sort of who we are and what we do. So that's what I serve, and like you said, like I'm not going to be an accountant. I don't know how, but this is what I want to do. And I guess there's also that, like at that 3 o'clock in the morning moment, you're like, maybe not. There is that choice,
Yeah.
We three of us have not made that choice.
Well, here's the thing is I did all those jobs. I spent 10 years as an executive at a computer manufacturing company. I spent a decade as a consultant at in a consulting firm that I helped start, that I was part owner of. I mean, I did all those jobs, and then I got to a point. I had that moment when I was like 40, I was like 38. I was 38 years old. My wife and I are laying in bed. I'm thinking about getting up to go to work the next day, and I just turned to her. I said, "I hate my job, and I don't want to do it anymore." And she said, "I want to go back to college." And we made a deal. We were like, "All right, let's do that. I'm going to you're going to go to college." And we just almost on the spur of the moment decided to change everything.
Wow.
But it wasn't, I'm never going to do that. For me, it was, I'm never going to do that again.
Right.
And there was a moment when I just decided I'm never going to have a day job again. I'm just never going to do that again. I'm done with that life.
I remember, while we were shooting The Expanse, your wife was going to college in Europe.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. She actually, this year, got her PhD. So she's done.
Right on. Wow. Congratulations. That's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah. Yeah. She's really smart.
Laying in bed one night and you're like, you know what? I'm fucking not doing this anymore. You know what? I'm not. That's really cool. You're right. You can do it.
I feel like it paid off better than the midlife crisis where you buy a sports car and bang your secretary. I feel like that version would not have turned out as well for me.
But did you start writing right away, Ty, when you knew you didn't want to?
No, actually, we moved to New Mexico, and I wound up going to work for George, running his media empire,
which is amazing.
Yeah, so I spent 7 years working for George.
And you guys were in a writers' circle, right? That supported each other's writing.
Oh, yeah. There's a New Mexico writers group called Critical Mass that like George R. R. Martin was in, and Walter John Williams, and Melinda Snodgrass, and Ian Trigillis, and
kind of amazing.
Sterling. Yeah, like a bunch of well-known writers are in that, and they invited me in because I had one published story that I had sold a couple of years before, and that was enough to make me a professional writer.
Yeah, yep.
So they invited me in, and Daniel Abraham, of course, was in that group, and that's how he and I wound up working.
That's how you guys hooked up.
Yeah,
but that whole writers group scenario, I mean, it's odd how it's almost like the Beatles. Like how do all these people coalesce into one of those gangs that actually is sort of extraordinary?
Yeah. I mean, I think with them it was they were all hanging out together anyway.
But how did that happen?
I don't know. I don't know how it started, but I mean, those guys have all been hanging out together for 50 years now. Wow. I mean, that's an old gang of friends.
Now you created your own production company. Where are you at from a Buick 8?
So my production company called Renegade, it has one of the first things that we optioned was Stephen King's From a Buick 8, which is sort of one of his lesser known novels. It's also I believe this is true, it's the only novel that he wrote that takes place outside of Maine. It takes place in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So it's sort of an outlier novel for him, which of course is attractive to me. And where we're at with it is we have a terrific director who's been in New Zealand for the past 9 months directing something for Netflix. And essentially because of COVID and all this other bullshit, we're kind of waiting for that to blow over, waiting for him to be done. And then launching it. One of the blessings was where we had just started taking out Buick 8 to sell it, but COVID hit and all that police nonsense happened in the world, where people were suddenly really like, defund the police, we hate the cops, and that became a thing. So of course my book is all about cops.
Yeah.
So, but one of the things that's been good is that we're letting that blow over, I hope.
Yeah, he was driving up from Florida to Maine, and he drove through that small town and
stopped at that gas station.
Yeah.
And he went to pee behind the gas station, and there was a slope with a little river. And he just thought to himself, Stephen King, what would happen if I fucking slipped in this slippery, wet grass, fell into the river, and fucking disappeared?
Yeah.
What would happen?
Yeah.
Who would know? And that created the novel. I love how it fucking, all this shit. It's great.
One of the things that we talked about, in which I was so excited when I first met you to talk about, is you've been involved with 3 Stephen King adaptations. More than 3?
3.
Oh yeah. You sure you had 3?
Buick 8 will be 4.
And yeah, Buick 8 is 4, and you've actually had dinner with Stephen King.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, it's just
so strange. I mean, like probably, I believe the 3 of us, we devoured Stephen King.
Yeah.
And the weirdness of having done 3 of them is just like, that's not something I sought out. It's just something that came into my orbit.
Yeah. And did you meet him on each project?
Kind of fascinating. What?
Did you meet Stephen King on each project when you were?
No, I only met him on The Mist.
On The Mist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna toss a recommendation out. I did this for Wes. I'm gonna do it for you too, Thomas. Joe Hill.
Oh yeah.
I have become as big a fan of Joe Hill's fiction as I am of Stephen King's fiction. I think Joe is as good as his dad.
Am I right? In the Tall Grass, they wrote together.
We wrote together, yeah. But I think Joe is an amazing writer.
No,
Full Throttle is one of my favorite collection of short stories of all time.
Full Throttle, awesome.
And the one about him growing up with his dad, that is
that one I haven't read.
Oh, it's so cool because talking about
going back to comics, Lock and Key was created by Joe Hill. And it's a fantastic comic series.
Yep.
And I got a big kick out of that. I'm sure they adapted it or something. I didn't hear.
Yeah, they have a TV show for Lock and Key. They've also got a TV show for Nosferatu, his weird vampire book. They keep talking about doing a movie of Heart-Shaped Box, which I think could
that would be great.
Fantastic movie. Yeah, I love that book. I think it'd make a great movie.
That would be great. Right. Those are the 2 that stand out for me. Lock and Key and Heart-Shaped Box. And then of course his short stories.
Yeah, 20th Century Ghosts, I think, is one of the best short story collections ever.
So good. Yeah. It's Heart-Shaped Box, was that his first full-length novel?
It was, yeah. So he wrote Heart-Shaped Box. He was still pretending not to be. He was still hiding his identity. He wrote Heart-Shaped Box.
Yeah.
It wasn't until Heart-Shaped Box became a big bestseller and his publisher, the story I've heard, so I'm not going to say this like I know it for sure. But the story I've heard is his publisher said, we're going to want to send you out on a signing tour. And then when they saw pictures of him, they go, everyone's going to figure this out, right? Because you look exactly like your dad. So at that point, the jig was up. But up until that point, he'd been
Richard Bachman Jr.
Yeah. All right. So let's drag this back.
Yeah. Let's geek out on some
back to working on episode 1 and Alien. One of the things we didn't talk about last time because you had something else come up, so we weren't able to get you for last time. But this time I want to talk about it. So last time we talked a lot about the Canterbury and how the Canterbury is like the Sulaco, or excuse me, like the Nostromo, and the crews are so similar and all that kind of stuff. What we didn't talk about is the Miller side of the story in episode 1. We didn't spend a lot of time on that, and I think our audience is going to be really interested in how you, as an actor, as a performer, because when we brought you on, you were our big get. You were our star.
I was the first one to come on.
Yeah, you were our big name star. So you had a lot of leeway on how you attacked the performance. You had a lot of sort of creative input into how you attack that role in that performance, and justifiably so. I mean, you've been working a long time. Your input is valuable. I'm really curious because at that point I was still sort of like a producer emeritus. I wasn't like really a working producer at that point, other than being a producer.
Right.
So I wasn't in a lot of those conversations between like you and Noreen and you and Mark and Hawk and
right.
How do you feel like you attacked that role and that material in that first episode to sort of create the character that Detective Miller would be for the
who I really bonded with was Mark.
Yeah.
Mark Burgess, so there's three. There were initially there was Noreen, there was Mark, and then there was who's Mark's partner?
Hawk Ospey.
Hawk. They're all great guys, but the one that I connected with, and probably the reason why I took the show, was because Mark had the emotional underground of who this guy's what this guy's journey was, right? And this sort of lost love, feeling. But and it really was. It was all about Julie and the way that we pursued that sort of awakening. So you take a guy who's brittle, who is an orphan, who's grown up on a rock, and become a cop, right? And so it's just as hard as you can get. That was the goal. It was like he's as hardened as you can get to emotional sort of intelligence. And how do you melt that? How does that creep in? Well, it doesn't creep in and he's not upset. It creeps in through his job, right? Through this story, through this missing girl, through this detective story. And he slowly starts to sort of melt and open his soul to the experience of another human being that isn't just about pain and death.
Do you remember the phone call where he sold you? I was actually sitting in the room during that phone call.
You were?
I was. I wasn't talking, but I was sitting there. Do you remember the phone? Do you remember the movie he used that that Mark absolutely sold you on the project? He mentioned the movie title and you were in.
Wow. It wasn't Blade Runner, was it?
No, it was The Verdict.
Oh, shit.
He talked about The Verdict.
Of course it was.
He said, you got a guy who has been broken by life.
Wow.
Who sees his shot at redemption.
Wow.
And he mentioned The Verdict. And I remember on the phone, you were silent for a minute. You go, yeah, that's it. I'm in.
Wow.
I thought that was so smart of Mark.
And truthful.
And truthful. So smart, so truthful. And immediately you understood what he was trying to tell you. Just
amazing. I wish I had the fucking memory that you have. See, good writers have really good memories. I'm like, it pisses me off. My girlfriend is like, you don't remember who came over yesterday? Okay, remind me.
I've been trying to kill my memory with alcohol for 30 years. It's so funny.
That still is not working. I mean, that's so cool that you remember that. That is so cool.
But I mention it because it ties in so closely with what you're talking about. You got a guy, the Paul Newman character in The Verdict. He is that guy. He's broken by life. Like his one thing he does is he goes to a bar and he plays a pinball machine.
Oh.
That's what he's got. He carries that sad little briefcase around.
He's a failed lawyer. He's
a failed lawyer. He's an ambulance chaser, right?
Right.
And suddenly this moment happens, this thing happens, and he looks at it and he goes, maybe I'm not done. Wow. Maybe I can still find a way back. Maybe I can redeem what I
beautiful.
And And the connection between that and Miller's story in the first season and a half was so obvious once Mark said it. But until Mark said it, it wasn't obvious.
Right. That's right. And that is what sort of defined our relationship. And to tell you the truth, working on those seasons, my relationship was with Mark. And we crafted together those scenes and that story because of what you just said. That's what launched the union. That we were like, okay, now we know the story that we want to tell, right? Yeah. It's like Sid Lumet, who's like, we all need to get together and decide that we're all making the same film.
Yeah.
Well, that was my relationship with Miller. Mark was Miller. In my mind, Mark was Miller, and I was trying to bring that to life. And that is a really special collaboration.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you brought up the verdict. There's a phenomenal scene where Paul Newman is sitting in the guy's office. He's trying to make the offer, and he's hugging his briefcase.
He's hugging his briefcase.
And he's making the big decision of what I'm going to do. And he sees the girl in the hospital before and how sick she is. But then you see Thomas in the first episode, and he's sitting on his porch, and he's seeing the little kid, playing, on the playing with a bird, or he sees the impact of taking those bribes and the guy that didn't clean the air filters. And then he just fucking grabs his jacket and takes the guy and throws him in the airlock and closes the thing and throws the money in there. So there's that pivotal decision where they're making the decision of who am I? Who am I? What is the person I'm going to be? And it runs parallel to the great verdict.
And a great parallel to our conversation, because that's also what we've been, talking about. Interesting.
Right. Yeah. Right. And Terry, Terry McDonough is our pilot director.
Well, I thought he was great.
Terry is great. And he established a lot of the visual language that we still use on the show for sure.
Right.
But one of the things he did is one of the scenes he shot so well is that moment where Miller's walking down the tunnel and everybody's choking from the bad air filters, and he sees the little girl choking. And he just locks eyes with her for a moment. And that is shot in a way, when we had you on to talk about 503, talk about the way you shot the Philip moment when he comes into the bar and sees his mother. And it's shot without dialogue, but you absolutely understand everybody's emotional state in that moment. It's that same kind of thing where Miller locks eyes with that little girl.
Right.
And you see him make the decision.
Right.
In that moment. Yep. He's going, this motherfucker. With bad filters, later when he sees the little girl playing with the ball, I think that's the trigger. But in that moment when he sees the little girl choking, it's shot in such a perfect way. There's no dialogue, nobody explains anything, but you just understand what's happening to this guy.
I love that. I love that kind of storytelling. You know, you do. And that's craft. That's craft. I really liked him. I don't know what happened to Terry.
Terry's a busy director.
He's doing a lot of shit.
Yeah, he's working all the time, and I think he does a lot of stuff that shoots in England and
right. Europe. Yeah, it's very much European. We were lucky. We were fortunate in the way that came together.
Yeah, I mean, we did talk to Terry about coming back for season 2, and I don't remember exactly why he couldn't.
Right.
But I do remember that that was in the discussion. We were definitely interested because Terry,
Yep.
And just from a personal note, I just loved hanging out with Terry.
I know, he was great.
Yeah, he was. He like every evening we got off work early. You immediately turn to me and go, "Shall we go to the shit Irish pub?"
That's great.
Yeah, that was every evening.
I stayed above the strip club.
I know. We picked you up from there. Do you remember when Daniel and I took you out to dinner?
Yeah.
We pulled up.
Pick me up at the strip club.
We pull up, a transpo van takes us over to the place where Thomas is staying. We pull up. It's like this super divey part of town, right? And the guy comes running over to the van that the driver thought was a homeless guy trying to get in. We got some homeless guys trying to get in, and it was fucking Thomas.
Didn't you walk into the hotel that they had for you and you're like, this ain't right.
This ain't right.
Take me other side of town.
I can't work here. I needed that. That was the other huge get for me, like just to get into that kind of gritty, noirish, futuristic, the way, again, like the Brett, on the Nostromo down there in the fucking bowels of the spaceship with the dripping shit around, right? It's like that. I was like, that's fucking cool.
So that's why you stayed there, is to just get yourself in the right headspace.
Always.
I always suspected that, but I never said
sure. Or maybe he's just really into strippers.
Man, I don't judge. But yeah, I always suspected that was part of what was going on there.
Do you kind of create a different process depending on the character that you're playing, or do you kind of have a similar process, like getting into?
Yeah, what would you say? I think that everyone offers its own unique sort of opportunity, right?
Right.
Yeah. What do you think?
I really enjoy experimenting with extremes. Like, I want to see, how far, I can push myself, because I just want it to be honest. I just want it to be true in the moment.
Yep.
If I feel like something is like I'm lying or something's phony, I can't sleep at night. It just it really triggers me. And it's not like, this artist integrity, whatever. No, it's just there's something that just hums right.
That's
If you do the work properly and you feel like you're telling the truth and you're having a true expression of something.
Right. But it's still a craft. It's a craft, and I go back to, like, how does that translate into the writing of something? Because you're also seeking a sense of truth, right? When you write, Ty, but how does that translate? Like, when do you know that that's bullshit? And how is that process? So you wake up every day when you're writing, and the story and the characters are evolving. Or
so Daniel and I have very similar processes. So I don't know what it's like for other writers. I never worked with anybody other than Daniel, so I don't know how it feels for them. But I know for both of us, if we write a bullshit line, you just know it as soon as you typed it. It's right. Like it never stays on the page. You're typing along, you type a line, and it's just bullshit. Right. And it just leaps off the page at you, and it says, "I'm wrong." And that can be. It most often shows up in character voice. When a character is saying something, and everybody engages on the writing process with different characters in different ways. One of the things that's true in our writers' room is we give all the big speeches to Daniel. So like Avasarala's big speech is Marco's big speech. He's just a guy who knows how to write a speech.
Right.
And less so in the later seasons than in the early seasons. But Wes will talk about this. He could always tell a script where I had not done an Amos pass. Yes. Amos pass. He would come up to me and go, "You haven't gone through this script yet, have you?"
And
like,
it was bad in the beginning.
Amos's voice is very clear to me.
Yeah.
So I'd be reading scripts and I go, "This is wrong. Amos doesn't say it this way. Amos doesn't talk this way." You'd see, like, you'd read a script and Amos would be threatening somebody. Like, no, he doesn't threaten people.
Right.
He makes statements of fact.
In the first 2, maybe 3 seasons, it was always a struggle if there was a new director on that.
Right.
Because they had this idea. Because it was always a struggle because they had this idea that, like, Amos had this bravado or this thing that comes from ego. And it's like, that's not, you're not understanding what is motivating his behavior.
Right.
What he wants specifically in this scene is way more simple. But you read, Ty, I'm going to ask you this because you read the original O'Banion script.
Yeah.
And then what are the major differences that Walter Hill did that made it alien?
Wait, the original what?
O'Banion script.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. The thing that Walter Hill, we talked about this in the last episode, is you needed all 3 of those guys to make the movie Alien. Dan O'Bannon brought all the sci-fi tropes. It's space people and they're on a spaceship and then a monster gets on board and they have to fight the monster. That was
credit for writing the graphic novel.
Yeah, the story structure is Dan O'Bannon's. What Walter Hill brought to the table is all of the grit. and the dirtiness and the griminess of it. Walter Hill's version was, you took out all of it. In Dan O'Bannon's script, I talked about this last time. Dan O'Bannon's script, the characters had names like Hunter and Ace. They were all like spacemen, right?
Wow.
Walter Hill's the one who went and said, no, these are fucking merchant marines in space.
Right.
They don't have cool nicknames. They're not awesome spacemen. They're just merchant marines truckers. And all of the grittiness, I think, this is me making assumptions about it, but I think all the grittiness came from Walter Hill, because Walter Hill hates things that are clean.
I know, man. I was pals with Walter Hill for a while. We actually went out and, after The Punisher came out, me and Walt, so they want to make a sequel. I went to Walter Hill and I was like, he's
the perfect guy for that.
Right. And so we went to Lionsgate, who owned it, and they turned us down. They said they were not into the Walter Hill version of The Punisher. And that's when I quit. I said, guys, I don't know what you're doing, but if it's not with Walter Hill, then I just brought you gold, motherfuckers. And that was, and we were going to do a couple other movies together, and it just never worked out. I was really upset about it, because he is, for me, he's at the top. I love Walter Hill.
There's still so much about this business I don't understand. I think if Walter Hill would come with the script of Punisher, I feel like people would be fighting. There's just so much I don't get.
So Tim is a true artist and one of my favorites, and we've become really good friends. So that was fun.
Walter Hill, man. I just saw 48 Hours recently.
Again? Yeah.
So good, man. I saw it, right? Watch it again. What a song that he nailed. Yeah, and you can see why Eddie Murphy is a star.
Right.
It just his comedy and toughness and intelligence, and it just leaps off the screen, and they're fucking good. Like Nick Nolte's good.
Oh my God, he's so good. But combining the humor with that grittiness, that's not an easy tone to hit.
Right. And one of the things that, it's funny, because you think about a movie like 48 Hours that you've seen over and over and over your whole life. But if you kind of go back, and now that you've worked a little bit and you watch that, you realize how unique and special that movie is.
Yeah.
And you realize that what Nick Nolte's doing as an actor in that movie. He's just in their chemistry and the relationship works in a way because they're both so fucking good. And you're catching, Eddie Murphy's a shooting star that's just, just
on fire.
On fire, man. And then the fucking, when he gets in the car and he just fucking drills him in the mouth and grabs the shit. It's a masterpiece. Like, it's one of my favorite to have that kind of humor and comedy, but real life stakes.
Gritty, you believe.
And Gantz is such a phenomenal bad guy.
So great.
I wonder if Gantz and Walter Hill, because of the Warriors, I wonder if that's how he got the job.
Of course. Yeah.
But did I ever tell you I worked with that guy? James Remar. So we were working together, and he did a guest star on the unit, and he was there. And I remember walking the makeup trailer and being like, that's fucking Gantz, man. I was so excited to meet him, and we talked and everything. So we literally said 2 words like, hey, how you doing? Da-da-da. So I'm in my trailer, we're getting ready to shoot. All of a sudden the door just no knocking, no, just comes slamming open. And the door opens and it pops on the thing. He goes, are you jerking off in there? and I go, no. And he comes in and goes, you want to run lines? And I was like, yeah, let's fucking run lines. And then we just hit it off. We just hit it off for the thing. And I remember even checking in with him,
cool.
He's a cool guy, man. And he goes, fucking 80s, man. That's and he talked about all the those great Hollywood stories and everything.
That is amazing.
He's one of those guys who's been steady for a really long time. That's hard to do in this.
One of those guys. That's hard to do. But they also become the carriers of the oral history of Hollywood.
Right.
It's the stories that you don't get out of many books. It's that oral history, which is also amazing about what we do, because there's no book. We are learning from the guys who are have come up before us who have learned from those guys all the way back to 2,000 years to the Greeks doing theater, right? That is how it is done in this particular art form.
Yeah.
You do not learn this out of a book. You learn it from people like James Remar, who fucking throws open your trailer and starts, that's how you learn it.
Yeah.
And that is interesting about what we do,
And by the way, to connect one of these stories back to The Expanse and Alien, I went to get my season 1 first physical in LA. Yeah. Season 1, like I haven't even been on or haven't met anybody yet. So I'm in the waiting room, and Harry Dean Stanton is sitting in the waiting room, and he's there to get a physical as well. And I sit down and I'm like, holy shit, it's Harry Dean Stanton. And he was like, just started a conversation. Hey, what are you guys working on something? I was like, yeah, working on the show called The Expanse. It's based off this book. He's like, oh yeah, we're doing this thing and whatever. Just like fucking like two guys going to work, man, just talking about bullshit, and
talk about a legend.
Oh my God, talk about a legend.
I don't know if I'd be able to, like I don't get starstruck. But I would have a hard time keeping my cool with that. I mean, that's legend status right there.
But I gotta figure out
Repo Man.
Yeah.
Repo Man. Come on. One of my favorites, Repo Man.
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
But I mean, look how much that guy can do with. So the first Avengers movie, love it or hate it, the scene where Harry Dean Stanton shows up is fucking brilliant. He's just like the old security guard. He has one scene with Mark Ruffalo, and he's the funniest thing in the whole movie. With one scene and maybe 2 lines of dialogue, he's the funniest thing in the whole movie. And when you can absolutely own a scene like that,
right.
I don't even know how you get to that point. Like, I don't even know what the process is to become that guy.
Right.
Dude, he's the dad in Pretty in Pink. He's Molly Ringwald's dad in Pretty in Pink.
Wow.
And every time you see him in that movie, you're immediately like falling in love with this guy. I mean, he's a down on his luck guy. He's such a good father, but he can't get his shit together. He's on the booze a little too hard. And he's so good that he even makes Pretty in Pink. Every time you see him in the screen, you're like, I want to know this guy's story. I want a movie around that guy.
Right.
Coming through it. And also, meeting him and talking to him is just it's not even being aware and like not paying attention that you're that guy. It's like just not even paying attention to that you're that guy. Right. Hey man, what are you guys working on? Oh, you guys going to, just like a regular conversation. Like we could be in the line of the post office. And I'm in awe, but he's not aware of that.
You get that sense with those guys that they've been doing this so long and they've seen all the bullshit that they're just kind of past all the bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they've been through it and they're past it, and none of it matters anymore.
Right. And then there's guys like you that I don't think have ever really. I think people that the bullshit just rolls off of them,
and probably always has, because that's part of what makes them, be able to do what they do in front of a camera. It is so unique. It is so difficult.
But Thomas, you have a little bit of that, the bullshit rolling off. I remember for season 1, episode 1, we're in catering, and there was a guy working there in catering. It was a new guy first, like he was new to the industry of catering, and he saw you, and he struck up a conversation. You were having this great conversation, and he goes, "Are you an actor?" Mm-hmm. And you go, yeah, I'm an actor. And he goes, "Are you working on this?" And you go, yeah. I'm working on this. And he goes, "Who do you play?" And you go, "I play Detective Miller, Joe Miller." And he goes, "Oh, cool, right?" And he's like, and I was like, "That's a really cool
idea. What's going on?" Just
there's never a moment of like, there was just a regular conversation with that guy, and that was a cool experience.
I got to bring up though, because that story plus the Harry Dean Stanton stuff makes me think part of what's happening with Detective Miller in episode 1 and part of what the character is doing in the season is, forgive me for saying this, Toms. Yeah. You had for a lot of your career been playing the handsome guy. You're a handsome guy, and you play, like in Hung, you're the handsome guy. You're the guy every woman wants to sleep with, right? And you've had that role for a long time. the thing with Miller is he's broken down. He's the Harry Dean Stanton. He's the broken down guy, right?
Right.
He's the guy everybody kind of sees as a joke a little bit, where his ex-girlfriend, she's dating like the handsome dude at the bar. Remember Mike, the guy with the mustache, the cop that your ex-girlfriend's now dating? Like he's kind of the broken down laughingstock character, and that feels that's so different from the version of you from like The Punisher or Hunk or one of those old movies where you're like,
it's also who I really am.
So you were never the gigolo that all the women were playing.
Nah, afraid not.
The
fucking homeless dude sleeping on the park bench.
But I find that for actors, like a lack of vanity or self-consciousness can be a superpower in a lot of ways. And I think Joe Miller works in a lot of ways because of the commitment that you give to it. And it's also like this lack of vanity that comes through. And you're still a handsome motherfucker. I mean, you can't help but breathe and be handsome, but it's not the most important part about you. It's not what you're putting forward, or it's not what you're protecting.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is interesting. Sometimes if I'm watching a scene, I can literally see, even if I'm watching on if I'm watching on TV, I can see the camera, I can see the light, and I'm like, okay, so they're not two people having a conversation. This person knows the angle of their face. They know right. Light glint off their eyes, whatever. And for me, it takes me out of the story.
Totally,
right away. But then there's people like Harry Dean Stanton. When you see him, and they're so involved, if you're interested, you become interesting.
Right. That's funny.
And they're so involved with the scene and what's happening, and they're not watching themselves. And those are my favorite actors. And that's
it goes back to what you both were talking about. When you write a bullshit line, it's just it just hits you. You just know, and it keeps. And like Wes said, it keeps me up at night.
It definitely does.
Having watched you work, on camera for a season and a half like we did, I found the thing that frustrated you, Thomas, most often in a scene was when you were opposite somebody who was not as engaged in the scene as you were.
Yeah.
The minute that the person wasn't totally in the scene and engaged and listening and giving something back, giving some energy back,
right,
you started to get really frustrated. And that says something too. That the fact that you want everybody on camera to be as committed to the scene as you are.
Yeah, because otherwise, you're not going to pay attention to me if you're looking at this other dude posing with a glint in his eye. You're like, then the whole fucking thing falls apart.
Yeah,
right.
Like, oh, dude, that doesn't work for me, man. Like, get in it, because I want this to work. When we're not thinking about all that other shit. But there's also a way of, as I've become sort of a more experienced actor, there's a way of tricking less experienced actors into doing something real. And most often you kind of gut punch them a little bit, because suddenly they're right, and they're in it, they're in something, fucking thank God. And that usually, because it's a fucking TV show, we've got 8 days to shoot it, we can't be here all fucking day thinking about how I'm going to get this guy to come to life. Usually you gut punch them. And
I watched you do it.
And I mean, I know. I'm not proud of it. I'm just saying that you got to get it done, and
it's one of my favorite stories from season 1. I'm not going to tell the story. It's been told before. I'm not going to tell the story, and I don't want to drag the guy. But watching you tell the story
without involving
watching Thomas take a guy who was struggling in the scene, wasn't involved, wasn't engaged, and not physically, but verbally slap him across the side of the head and go, "Wake the fuck up and get in the scene." It was amazing to watch. And yet, here's the thing, and I don't know about that guy, and I don't know what his struggle was, and I'm not trying to drag him. I have to say, if I was there, if I was in that moment, that would work on me. That would wake me up. Getting slapped across the side of the head always snaps me out. And it's happened in writing before. It's happened in other business situations before. I mean, I like the best things that have ever happened to me were getting fired.
Right.
you know, where
Yep.
you're like, oh, I gotta wake up. I gotta get my shit together, man.
Right.
And I think,
and what you guys were talking about earlier, which is a certain amount of arrogance. I don't know if that's the right word, but it does require a certain amount of arrogance to take that step and slap somebody over the head and say, wake the fuck up. Right. And there's that. So, but the purpose is always, how are we going to get the best fucking shit that we can get right now?
Yeah.
Well, and I think the best reaction to that is also that arrogance to say, this guy doesn't think I'm good. I'm going to prove him wrong.
Yes. Right. Challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that infuriates me, that really upsets me, is and it's only with the TV show, especially in our first 2 seasons, 3 seasons before anybody kind of heard of The Expanse or knew what it was. But like, for instance, I got to work on a Christopher Nolan movie this summer, and being on the movie, there's a certain adrenaline and there's a certain everybody focused, and you show up and everybody's there to focus and work. Now, for me, I'm like that for anything I do. I look at it the same way. Like, I still have that nerves, that adrenaline, and I feel that thing. What happens is on The Expanse, particularly in first season when nobody's heard of the show, they didn't know what it is, there's a lot of people that are just, getting their lunch pail and showing up to work.
Just in the show, who knows?
Yeah. And so
network show. Right.
Yeah. And then, so I see them when we're, rehearsing or whatever, and they're just tuned out. They have an opinion about the show, about the genre or whatever. Right. And they're like, okay, so what? And you can hear the little jokes, whatever. That's right. I feel like we're doing Citizen Kane, every single
day,
show, every day, everything, every movie. And that's the level of commitment I bring to it. And so if I see that kind of lack of commitment for somebody that's just, doing a job and it works for them or whatever, but it just drives me crazy when they have when they have a certain kind of opinion about when they think they're better than what it is.
Right. But that's sort of the base attitude of what we show up with to bring what we deliver, and also something that why we're doing this show together is because part of that commitment came from the movie Alien, like that's what wakes me up in the morning. And if you don't have that, then you're left to your own devices. You're not like, oh, I'm going to work on a Christopher Nolan film. Like, first of all, you don't even know what the fuck that means. You're just going to go to the bar after work and go, I'm working with Christopher Nolan. Like, that commitment is generated by something within you, not something exterior that says, I'm going to judge this based on all these other factors. The fact that we're only shooting this for $1.5 million. I'm going to go do a movie with my daughter in January. We have a $1.5 million budget. And are you kidding? Of course. I am throwing everything I've got into it.
For me, it's always the same. It's all this, I love it. That's what we're doing. And I get turned on by just telling a story and creating.
And I think it's contagious. And that's the other thing that I've learned over time is that if you bring that enthusiasm, like, don't be shy about it. Like, it's contagious because other people, it does wake people up. And, you don't have to necessarily slap them across the face to wake them up. You can also wake them up with the joy of what you're doing, and that's something that I've learned over the past, couple of years,
But, real quick about Alien is kind of reading about the casting process and how Sigourney Weaver came up and how she was a part of it. I don't know. I'm going to call a little bit of bullshit because Sigourney Weaver, a little bit of the thing is like, I thought it was this, sci-fi movie and I was really devoted to doing theater and I had and that's probably true. But I know when coming up, that I know that there was a lot of people that were like, that said they just wanted to do theater, but they were dying to get into these movies. They were dying to do these things. And there is a certain kind of a hip kind of in group that like, oh, we don't care about film. We'll do films.
Totally.
We'll do films to do these things. And for me, it just never really stacks up to that because the effort that they put in getting into these films that they look down on, it just drives me crazy. So there's a little bit of, I'm like, Sigourney Weaver, you've never done anything. This is, and granted, Ridley Scott has only did The Duelist before this, but
talk about hitting the jackpot, dude.
Yeah, you knew that this was special. Come on, Sigourney. All right, I got.
Right. It becomes a story, yeah. And again, there is sort of a certain amount of storytelling when we relate. It's like Harrison Ford was just a carpenter.
Yeah,
story, right? He was fixing a door in a studio, and somebody walked by and goes, "You."
Yeah, to me that kills me the most is when people are like, I just kind of fell into it. It's like it's too goddamn hard to fall into it. You wanted to do this.
I think that has happened, but I think it has happened so rarely. Yeah, I think it's happened.
Burt Reynolds, man, he paid his dues.
He sure did. He's fucking good too.
He worked his ass off.
But he was a stuntman, and that's sort of like what Ty's saying. Like, he kind of fell into the acting thing and however he did it, but he was a stuntman.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember
he's totally lying, and I
listen, I've read an embarrassing amount on Burt Reynolds, and I've read a lot of his biographies and everything. And so, one story that is true, and it's backed up by Clint Eastwood and Burt Reynolds, is they got fired on the same day.
Really?
They got fired the same day. They're walking off the studio. And Burt says to Clint, "Hey, Clint." They hired Burt. They fired Burt because they said he didn't know how to act, and they fired Clint because his Adam's apple is too big. Right. And so they're walking. And Burt said, "Hey, Clint, I can learn how to act. What the hell are you going to do about that Adam's apple?" And they both confirmed that story, and they said it was true. But I just read and I just heard for the first time. Do you know that the ending of Alien that Ridley Scott wanted was that the alien bit off Ripley's head and then called the Earth or whatever it is, and he spoke in Ripley's voice.
Whoa, dude!
They're coming to Earth.
Wow.
Everything's fine. We're on our way to Earth.
Whoa. No, but that's fucking trippy as hell.
Yeah, it's so fucking trippy, and they wouldn't let him do it. And is Walter Hill the one that put in the women in the script?
Yes. Yeah, the Dan O'Bannon script, everybody was a boy.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And then did Ripley survive towards the end in Walter Hill's script?
They did have. It's been like 30 years since I read it, but I believe there was a similar kind of thing where there was one survivor who gets away. Although I think a lot of the particulars of how it happens are very different.
Yeah. Because I was, like we discussed last time, I was thrown for when what's his name, Dallas. When Dallas dies,
right? You're like,
I was like, what? Because for me, and I was telling Ty, for me, especially at that age when I first saw Alien, you get introduced to what the hero is. This is the hero. He's the captain of the ship. He's, this guy looks like a hero. He's gonna, and then he goes weird. And then when he dies, it disorients me because I'm like, fucking everybody could die. What's going on? Like the structure and the hierarchy of like who survives and who dies is like,
which I think that might have been the first twist but we stole that in Deep Blue Sea. When I did the Deep Blue Sea, we had Samuel L. Jackson get killed halfway through the film.
One of the most famous deaths.
Obvious ripoff of Dallas dying halfway through Alien.
That death is so amazing, startling. Right? That death is so startling, man. It's famous as one of the most startling on-screen deaths. Like if you see a top 10 list of startling on-screen deaths,
right,
that's always in the top 10.
They didn't know what they created because we went to a premiere in New York City before the movie, a week before the film comes out. And when Samuel L. Jackson gets eaten by the shark halfway through the film, you literally could not hear what was going on screen for at least 5 minutes. 5 minutes, which is a long fucking time in the movie theater.
Yeah,
they just rolled like it was the laughter and the yelling and the startling, and then it would die down, and then it would start up again, and you're like, you can't even understand what the fuck anyone's talking about on screen for 5 minutes. Like they lost their minds, and that's when Warner Brothers was like, wait a second, we might actually have a hit here because it hadn't tested well. We're like, and then they tried to add more money to the marketing campaign, but it was sort of too late. It came out the same weekend as the Blair Witch Project.
Oh, did it?
Changed our whole conception of how to advertise, how to market a film.
What was the movie where Steven Seagal dies in the first, like?
Oh yeah, the one where they're getting onto the airplane.
Yeah, they get on the airplane. They have Steven Seagal film, and they just come by.
It's got a terrible title. It's like Maximum Risk or some kind of shit like that. Executive Decision. I knew it had a terrible title.
God.
Executive Decision. To drag this back to what we were talking about, I mean, that is the whole setup of the first episode of the show. Is you meet all these people on the ship, and you meet the captain, and
totally cool.
You meet Holden's girlfriend, and you meet like all the other people, and then some people get sent off on this little shuttle, and then while they're gone, everyone you just met dies.
Everybody's dead.
Everybody's dead.
That's pretty cool.
And now you got 5 people trapped on this shuttle. And the idea is that the audience comes away from that going, oh, any one of those people could die.
Yeah.
But, we play that gag again. And, we won't spend too much time on it because it's a later episode. But in the middle of season 2, we play that gag again because Miller is so clearly the star of the show. Miller is clearly our top character.
Yeah.
We almost kill him in episode 4 of season 2 with the Nauvoo slamming into the asteroid. And then the end of that is the cliffhanger of the Nauvoo just missed what happened. And that's that moment where it goes, oh, Miller's safe. We thought they might kill him because he was going to get hit by the ship, but now he's safe because the ship missed. This is us saving our best character. And then in the very next episode, we kill him.
and Thomas, did you know
that was pretty cool.
Did you know the ending when you first came on?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, everybody. That is Ty and That Guy episode 2.
Thank you for coming to our second episode of Ty and That Guy about the movie Alien. We promise not to do 20 more of these, although we probably could.
Yes, we could. It was pretty great. It was pretty great. Thanks for having me on, guys. That was really cool.
To our guest, Thomas Jane. This was such a good time, man. It was so fun having you on, and I'm glad that we were able to make this work. So like, and subscribe, and do all the things to support us, and we will be back soon with episode 3.